Welcome to All About ETH, a special CoinDesk debut presentation of the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap at one of the largest and longest running gatherings of the Ethereum community. I'm talking about the World Computer, talking about Ethereum. All Ethereum, all the time. All right, let's have a live look right now at the CoinDesk Ethereum ETX indexes at 2908 right now. ETH is taking a hit, about 8.25% down over the past 24 hours. The CoinDesk BTX, Bitcoin index, is at $41,225. Bitcoin is down almost 7% over the past 24 hours, and the DFX CoinDesk DeFi index is at 286, also retreating about 5.8% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions in 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. So very exciting, great atmosphere here at ETHDenver. Let's go to our first guest now. Between the Pacific Islands, deep in the Pacific, halfway between Hawaii and Australia, is a volcanic chain of islands, the Marshall Islands. And they're doing something pretty prolific. They are going to attract DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, to incorporate there. And so we have with us
Adam Miller.
Adam Miller, co-founder
It's an honor
of
to be here.
MIDAO.
It's great to see you. Thank you.
And you're forming a local domestic organization that will help corporations register.
That's right. So the Marshall Islands has recently passed a law that updates their LLC rules so that it explicitly recognizes the unique nature of DAOs, provides corporate personhood and limited liability to DAOs by specifically referencing smart contracts on the blockchain, token holders as the members, and this all came about when several months ago, the founder of Shipyard Software, Mark Lurie, he has a DEX called Clipper. They needed to become a DAO so that they could give their DEX to the community. And what they saw was that there were a number of challenges associated with becoming a DAO. One of the biggest ones is that there was no good option for corporate personhood. So he went to the Marshall Islands, spoke with the government, built some relationships there, and we collaborated with them to pass a new law that updates their LLC law so that a DAO can now have an LLC in the Marshall Islands. So MIDAO was formed to help people through that process and help their DAOs sign up and become LLCs to get the benefits of being incorporated.
So there are a lot of DAOs out there that are in different various stages of decentralizing. Some of them have foundations that are dissolving. Others, like MakerDAO, I'm thinking they're our next guest. So why do they need to become registered as a corporation?
Sure. So really there's two issues that most DAOs are facing with respect to incorporation. The first is legal personhood. Legal personhood is what you need to own an asset in the real world, to hire an employee, to sign a contract with anyone, to sue or be sued. So all of these things, if you're a DAO and you've created a product or you have intellectual property and you want to protect your intellectual property, you have no way to do that today. You can't sue anyone. And you can't even have a contract that gives you that intellectual property in the first place. That's one of the problems. The other one is limited liability. So today, any member of a DAO can be held liable for the actions of the DAO and any other member of that DAO. So whether that has to do with securitization, tokenization, tax issues, other day-to-day issues of the organization, you could be personally held liable with your own assets for anything that the DAO does. By incorporating, by becoming an LLC in the Marshall Islands, that takes away the liability from the individuals by forming the corporate entity so that the DAO as an entity is the only organization, the only thing that could be held liable in the case that you run into trouble with the law or you get sued.
Now, why in the Marshall Islands versus, say, in the United States?
Sure. So the Marshall Islands has a long history of being a favorable environment for corporations. 1 out of every 5 of the world's ships happens to be registered in the Marshall Islands because of their favorable corporate legislation, a history of being a good place to register a DAO. In addition to that, the government is very innovative. They have a lot of forward thinkers who were extremely receptive to updating their legal framework so that it would work well for DAOs. In the United States, there are some LLC options, there are other options for DAOs. None of them explicitly recognize the nature of the DAO. So for example, they require you to have a list of humans that is held responsible for the DAO and actually controls the LLC at the end of the day. And so those humans can break off from the will of the community, which goes totally against the ethos of a DAO. The other issue, for example, with the Wyoming LLC law is it requires a quorum of over 50% on any vote related to governance of the DAO. No DAO ever gets 50%. It's very rare to have 50% of your community show up to vote. Often it's 5%, 10% of the community that shows up to vote, and that's okay. And so that's a limitation of the Wyoming LLC, is that the day-to-day operations of any normal DAO make it incompatible with the way their law is written. So ours is the only incorporation-related legislation in the world today that explicitly recognizes that the DAO is a smart contract living on the blockchain, and its members who receive limited liability are blockchain addresses or their token holders or their NFT holders. It's actually written into the law. So right out of the gate, you get the full corporate personhood, full limited liability for all the members, and the Marshall Islands was simply the most innovative country that was willing to do this first.
What's in it for the Marshall Islands? Like, do they benefit? And I know, what is your relationship with the Marshall Islands? Because I know you're actually not from there originally.
Yeah, I'm not from there, and we have partners there that are essential to the operation of our company, and we're essential to updating these laws. The way we got this done in the Marshall Islands was one of our founders, who's an advisory founder, Mark Lurie, had previously worked with the Marshall Islands government on other issues. And so when this issue came up for his DAO, for Clipper, it occurred. So actually the first thing he did was he reached out to me. So I was doing DAO consulting at the time, helping all kinds of DAOs with all kinds of different issues, especially tech stack, so tokenization, governance, community building. There's all kinds of different tools you need to be able to effectively run a DAO. So he reached out to me, and as soon as I heard about the problem he was having and found out that we had relationships in the Marshall Islands, which has an innovative government that was willing to go after some of these issues, I left DAO consulting and I partnered up with MIDAO to go after what is probably one of the biggest issues that DAOs have today. It's also the easiest to solve. You don't have to build millions and millions of dollars worth of technology. You don't have to work with hundreds of partners to be able to solve this problem. You just need to incorporate in the Marshall Islands. And so we have a real opportunity to help DAOs and their members immediately.
All right, so how can people get a hold of you?
So you can find MIDAO at MIDAO.org, and there you can find our Discord, you can find our Twitter, you can fill out a contact form or email me directly. If you want to find Shipyard, which was the founding advisor, you can go to clipper.exchange and see their first DEX.
So much interesting news to see the developments in the DAO space. That was Adam Miller, co-founder of MIDAO.
Thank you, Christine.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
All right, the recent market downturn is taking a toll on cryptocurrencies, and ETH is no exception. It's down about 40% since its November high. Notably, since Ethereum Improvement Protocol EIP 1559 was activated in August of 2021, this chart shows daily transactions in blue and gas fees in yellow have been falling month over month since November of last year. The larger effect on the network is lower fee burning and increasing Ether inflation. CoinDesk's Edward Oosterbaan saying falling transaction fees are great for user experience, but maybe not so great as a signal for the network as a whole. Network activity will always be correlated to crypto asset prices, but an overly strong relationship between the two could signal that the majority of Ethereum applications are focused on asset speculation rather than on real-world adoption. All right, so we just spoke about how DAOs are trying to incorporate. Let's talk to another DAO, and this is the DAO, MakerDAO, that has a history of now just trying to dissolve and is now going on a journey of, what happens next. So with me, I have Nadia Alvarez, head of growth at MakerDAO. Hello there, Nadia. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. Right now we are working on the complete decentralization of the protocol, which was part of which was part of the plan all the time. Since the beginning, that's why Maker is called MakerDAO, because since the beginning we thought about becoming in a decentralized organization.
Decentralization really exists on the spectrum because there are certainly DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, are different varying stages of decentralizing. So where is MakerDAO in its journey? Because you had a foundation that is dissolved. What's the process been like, and where are you at now?
Well, yeah, you're right. Decentralization is a spectrum. That's correct. We all agree on that. The foundation was there because the idea was like to have the biggest decentralization possible for a protocol. So right now, I think we are in a very good point where the protocol is managed by the community. So the community is just like organizing everything that has to be done through what we call core units. So everyone in the community can just propose a new core unit with a mandate, a budget, and the resources this core unit needs to achieve their goals. And the maker holders, through the governance process, decide if that's what the DAO needs and if they want to vote in this new core unit. So basically, yeah, right now everything is managed by the community and decided through governance by the maker holders.
We just spoke to our last guest, MIDAO, and they are helping DAOs incorporate because there are legal liability issues. If something goes wrong in the DAO, that could affect everyone, and so how do you deal with that? I mean, there's so many voices in the DAO managing the governance and everyone. How do you get through those issues?
Well, that's up to each core unit. So each core unit or contributor, they decide if for their mandate it's important to incorporate and have a company, then they can do that. But it's up to the contributors. So essentially the protocol is just a protocol on the blockchain. There's no company or central entity managing the protocol. We are just part of the community, and we provide our services to the protocol. If we as core units or as a contributors think it's important to incorporate because of some reason, for example, there are a lot of anons working for the protocol, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to have a company behind them. So yeah, I think that in that sense the protocol just it's open to whatever.
We're hearing this trend of various corporate entities DAOifying. It's becoming a verb. Do you see that trend continuing, or how do you know that DAOifying is right for a company?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we are seeing different trends. I have no idea if it's a good one or a bad one, but I'm sure it's what the community needs right now, because we need to of and on how the DAOs are organized. We need to evolve on this structure. It's a new type of organization, new type of how we are working for a protocol, for an objective. So I think we are in this roadmap to evolve what a DAO is, and we are seeing different types of DAOs, different ways on how a DAO should work or not. We are just discovering and doing experiments, I think. So I don't know. I have no idea how this will end up, but I think it's an interesting path for a crypto organization, because as crypto companies, we are all over the world. We work for a protocol that is not in a particular place. So DAOs make a lot of sense in this type of protocol solutions. So I guess what we will see is how this evolve. Maybe in 10 years it will be called differently, but it will have the essence of the DAO. I don't know. So,
do you think that this is more of a buzz, or a passing trend, or do you see this as a long-term investment or revolution among corporate group entities?
I think it's too early to know that. I think it will evolve. I don't know how, because we are creating it. There's not. Yes, it's a great experiment. It's just we created DeFi, we created crypto. Everything is just it started as an experiment, and it's evolving. And while we are evolving that mindset, we are also finding new ways to do it, adapting what exists into this decentralized world. So I think that will happen with DAOs. Like what we are seeing now is just like the initial phase of like maybe how in the future every organization will be organized. I don't know, but I think it's just like it has to evolve. It's just like
what are some of the key lessons learned from dissolving?
The key lessons. I think it was interesting that we had a foundation, because the community needs someone to help them to bootstrap the next steps. So I think that was like a good decision, like to create this foundation to like start like organizing everything and help the community to organize themselves. Another one was like, thanks to that, we had like a great community. Our community is like really passionate about Maker, and also they are super knowledgeable about it. So that's also super important. You need a good community that can then later, after the foundation get dissolved, to like be in charge of the protocol. So I think yes, those were like
It's fascinating to see this organization, this of thousands, potentially millions of people joining and seeing how this develops. So Nadia, thank you for joining us. Nadia Alvarez is the head of growth at MakerDAO. All right, coming up, we'll have continuing coverage of ETHDenver. Again, one of the largest gatherings of the Ethereum community. It's very, very active, very animated. Stick around. We're going to talk with CoinFund next. Last month, former chair of the CFTC, Giancarlo, announced that he was joining as a policy advisor to VC firm CoinFund. And earlier, I had a chance to speak with Jake Brukhman, the CEO of CoinFund, to talk about what Giancarlo has to add, what he has to offer, what are the goals, and how he wants to contribute to the crypto community, as well as his vision from the transition of Web 2 to Web 3.0. Have a listen.
Thanks for the question. Well, at CoinFund, we take the regulatory process quite seriously. We're at a time when, the regulation, legislation, and rulemakings around crypto assets and digital assets and Web3 are being figured out in the United States. We want to be part of that discussion. We want to help to influence, the final form of how this guidance happens in the U.S. And also, we have a portfolio of founders who are building cutting-edge technologies. There are people who are fractionalizing NFTs or building new, DeFi applications. We want to be able to advise our founders on kind of the safest, most responsible ways of going to market with their products. Now, Chris has tremendous experience in the U.S. regulatory space. He's a pioneer of crypto. He loves technological innovation, and I think he's an incredible resource for the crypto industry with respect to these processes. So we're incredibly lucky to have him join us as an advisor on regulatory matters.
So one of the things Giancarlo has put forward is that he wants the CFTC to regulate the crypto spot markets. In terms of crypto regulation, what policy would you like to see formed? As you said, you want to have a voice at the table.
Yeah, so it's a big question, right? I would say, like, if we rewind about a year ago, and you asked folks like, when are we likely to see crypto legislation in the U.S., they would say, that's really far off. What we have today, as we sit here, Christine, is that there's 3 bills kind of being proposed in Congress around crypto legislation. 2 of them are pretty comprehensive, and all of them are pretty moderate as far as our read of them goes, right? They'll say things like, hey, maybe, we shouldn't regulate DeFi yet because it's, it's still a little bit too early, or maybe it'll give a little bit of clarity of how to classify digital assets as securities or not, right? And so what we really want to see is moderate, kind of legislation that kind of speaks to the innovative nature of the space, speaks to a hands-off approach that allows.
Yeah, I'm not sure which bills you're talking about because actually there's quite a few. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying there's a McHenry bill going around. There's a Loomis bill, right? I think we're likely to see them kind of make progress over the next 2 years, and like the headline for me is founders in our industry, they want clarity. Like that is the thing that is the most bullish for space. So as long as these bills are responsible, thoughtful, and moderate, like I think that's really bullish for the industry.
Well, you're here at ETHDenver. I mentioned earlier that Rarible is one of the teams you're
absolutely
advising and a investor in. And so what do you see coming forth for the NFT industry, and what kind of advice are you giving them?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a super exciting time to be in NFTs. It is, arguably one of the very few verticals that's starting to get early mainstream adoption. About a year ago, we saw an inflection point in the NFT space, and we saw a lot of corporates starting to take an interest in the space from that time. It's now about a year later. We've seen Nike and Adidas kind of going to the space. We just had a Super Bowl, with the halftime commercials around crypto and NFTs. I think it was something like 6 or 7 of them. This is really starting to feel like, this is starting to become a kind of a mainstream idea, and we're still pre most of the corporate adoption of all these NFT strategies. I think we're going to start to see corporates launch, more and more strategies in the market.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. In terms of the crypto markets, we're getting a bit of a drawdown right now. How is that impacting the NFT market?
So it's interesting. We've seen some correlation between kind of the macro environment, some of the Fed announcements, and the big high cap assets like Bitcoin. But if you look at the NFT space, it's generally a little bit less correlated, to that environment. It's, if you look at kind of the constituents of who's trading NFTs, what they're trading, I read metrics about 40,000 unique buyers. Those folks still feel like very much enthusiasts, and the assets that they're trading are very much crypto native collectibles and in-game assets right now. As I said, we're still pre most of the mainstream adoption, and that's exciting because we have a lot more growth to go.
And do you see NFTs moving beyond art and, say, going to real estate and other tangible objects?
100%. So we already see 3 main use cases for NFTs in the market: in-game assets, collectibles, and crypto art. As a matter of fact, they started with crypto art, but now crypto art is, kind of a minority percent of the market share. Now, our thesis at CoinFund has always been that NFTs are general financial technology for uniquely valued digital assets. So we think that things like movies, music, recording artists, fonts, stock photos, they'll all go on chain in the form of NFTs. And again, we're just at the beginning of that process.
All right, awesome. So just diving into your investment thesis here, as you come into ETHDenver, I mean, what excites you? Where do you think it's going? Further down the line in a couple of months. So
one thing to say is ETHDenver is like 5 times bigger, or at least it feels 5 times bigger than it had in previous years. I've attended every ETHDenver conference that there has ever been. I always have felt that I knew everyone at the conference. I feel like I don't know anyone here today. This is coming amid a trend that we're seeing at CoinFund, where there's a ton of really experienced Web 2 engineers, founders, entrepreneurs coming into the industry and starting to build, really robust products that are poised to take different areas of blockchain technology to mainstream market, and it's really exciting.
I'm also seeing that just a lot of new people, a lot of mass adoption, people curious, wanting to discover what blockchain, cryptocurrencies, Web3 is all about. Now, on the flip coin, I want to say some incumbents like Jack Dorsey of Twitter now, CEO of Block. You have Moxie Marlinspike, the creator of Signal, have criticized Web3 in the sense that a lot of Web2 incumbents like VCs are coming in and having a larger influence on things. And they're concerned that the Web2 model, where things are centralized, will take over the Web3 ethos of wanting to be decentralized and giving sovereignty to people. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I understand the issue, and I think it's an important issue to think through and discuss. What I feel about decentralization technology is that it has this core property of openness and permissionlessness. And what that means is that retail users can become owners in these networks. It means that the developers who are creating them can own meaningful stakes. And it also means that investors kind of more broadly in the world can go to potentially public markets and buy some of these assets. I think the innovation is there, whether or not kind of traditional investors are participating in this opportunity. The most important key point for me is, are we democratizing access, to these networks? And I think overall the answer is yes. When folks kind of point out this idea that that these networks could be compromised by people with a lot of capital, a lot of times what they're referring to is the governance system, right? Like most governance systems in crypto today, they are kind of token-weighted voting system. It means that if you have more capital, you can buy more tokens and you can have a kind of a greater influence in the network. But you know what? We're just at the beginning of understanding what different kinds of governance systems are possible in blockchain. People have proposed like one person, one vote systems. There's many other kind of cooperative games that are possible to affect governance. And I think that for those networks that feel uncomfortable with concentrations of governance power, they can use technology to overcome it. So I'm actually like extremely bullish on the technology of the space figuring these issues out.
All right, that was CoinFund CEO Jake Brukhman, and that's it for All About ETH. Join us again tomorrow for another encore special presentation of All About ETH at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, 3 o'clock Eastern, as well as join me in the morning at 9 a.m. Eastern for First Mover, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, where we'll talk to the movers and shakers on All About ETH, live from ETHDenver. This is CoinDesk TV.